Moving on, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov has warned of a decisive response to any aggression after U.S. President Donald Trump backed calls to shoot down Russian planes that violate NATO airspace. Several European countries say Russian fighter jets and drones have violated their airspace over the recent weeks as Moscow presses on with its invasion of Ukraine. Lavrov made it clear that its trade relations with India are not under threat, despite U.S. President Trump imposing punitive tariffs on Indian goods over the purchase of Russian oil. Responding to a question from WION at a press conference after his speech, he said that Kremlin fully respects India and its foreign policy that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is carrying out for its national interest.
India has continued purchasing Russian oil, even as the United States has pressed countries to reduce such imports. First of all, how do you view this relationship with India in this context, and what does it mean for India-Russia relations more broadly?
We have full respect for the national interests of India, full respect for the foreign policy that Narendra Modi is carrying out to promote these national interests. What we buy from other countries, not the United States, but from Russia or other countries, that's our own business. And that has nothing to do with the Indian-U.S. agenda. And I believe that that is a very worthy response that shows that India, like Turkey, has self-respect.
Lavrov again referred to the answer again after being asked another question about the India-Russia economic partnership. He added that India is free to choose its own partners.
Regarding the oil question, I already answered it for your colleague who also represents Indian media, but you phrase the question this way. Are there any chances to salvage the economic partnership between Russia and India? It's not under threat. I have no doubt. No one is encroaching on it, and if someone were to take such steps, I'll say it again. The Indian Prime Minister and the Indian Foreign Minister have both explained that India chooses its own partners.
Earlier speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, Lavrov warned NATO and the European Union that any aggression against Russia will be met with a decisive response.
Threats of force against Russia, accused of practically planning an attack on the North Atlantic Alliance and the European Union, are becoming increasingly common. President Putin has repeatedly debunked such provocations. Russia has never had and does not have such intentions, but any aggression against my country will be met with a decisive response.
Speaking later to reporters, Lavrov said that if any country downs objects still within Russian airspace, they will very much regret it. NATO, which considers an attack on one ally an attack on all, has been considering whether to shoot down Russian planes in what would be a dramatic raising of the stakes with Russia. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday voiced support for downing Russian planes. However, Lavrov still went out of his way to praise Trump, underlining his administration's desire to develop pragmatic cooperation without adopting an ideological stance. Lavrov's more critical comments were aimed at Europe, especially Germany. He suggested that Germany is returning to its Nazi past in the loaded attack on Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Lavrov denounced what he called militaristic rhetoric from Merz. Merz has called for Europe to step up its own defense spending, pointing to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For more on this, our correspondent Susan Terani sent us this report from New York.
In his address here at the United Nations, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov reiterated Russia's readiness for negotiations over Ukraine as long as Russia's security concerns and the rights of Russian-speaking populations are assured. He firmly rejected Western accusations against Moscow and warned that any aggression toward Russia would be met with, quote, a decisive response. On institutional reform, he called for more representation at the United Nations Security Council, endorsing permanent seats for India and Brazil as part of a broader expansion across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.